It's UofL Today on 93.9 The Ville. Here's your host, Mark Hebert.
And welcome to UofL Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville. Hopefully you've heard our show before, know what it's all about. But in case you're a first-time listener, this is a show that's about all things University of Louisville, things like research, great students, programming on campus. Those are the types of things we talk about and the people we talk to on this show. So what do we got coming up today? Well, she's one of UofL's star recent graduates, winning a Fulbright Award and traveling the world. Shelby Lawson will be here to chat about her experiences. And if you're a Game of Thrones fan, stick around. The guy who created the Dothraki language for the hit show was on UofL's campus a little while back. We'll have an interview with him. His name is David Peterson, for those of you who are Game of Thrones fans. But first, we're going to talk about something called greebles. Actually, Emily Mason from the Department of Neurological Surgery is going to talk a little bit about greebles and what they are as part of a much broader discussion we're going to have about her research on Alzheimer's. So welcome, Emily. Glad you finally got here.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Had some car problems last time we wanted to have you on the show.
A little bit.
This time.
I drove more carefully today.
Good to hear it. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about your research. What's your specialty? What are you doing research on?
Sure. So I have a PhD in neuroscience. And so the research we're going to talk about today was looking into some of the signs of Alzheimer's that we may be able to pick up much earlier than we can now. So I was looking at people in their 40s and 50s, whereas usually Alzheimer's is diagnosed in the 60s and 70s.
Right. So this is early stage Alzheimer's we're talking about and how to detect it early. So what have you found? What are you looking at, and what have you found so far?
Sure. Well, one of the things that is a problem with Alzheimer's disease is that we can't detect it quite early enough. Right now, by the time that we detect it, usually there's been such significant damage to the brain that it's hard to come up with any treatment that can restore function. So one of the goals of Alzheimer's research is to find out what's happening at the very beginning of the disease. So there are two different pathologies that are associated with Alzheimer's disease. There are amyloid plaques and tau tangles. We focused on tau tangles, which show up in an area of the brain that's called the entorhinal and perirhinal cortex. That's
okay. Yeah,
that's
sure
a lot
it
of
is.
information.
Yeah, for somebody that's got a communications degree, those are big words. But go ahead. No, I think most of us know what the tangles are. I've heard that term in connection with Alzheimer's.
Yep. So because they show up most of the time in this one area of the brain, we were wondering, okay, what does that area of the brain do? And can we test that area of the brain and see if there are any differences that we can pick up in those early stages. Mm-hmm. So we recruited a number of people who are at an increased risk for Alzheimer's disease because they have parents that have been diagnosed with
Family history of Alzheimer's.
Exactly. Then we did some genetic testing to see if they had one of the gene markers for the disease. And we had them do cognitive tests. And so basically, they would come into the lab, sit down in front of a computer, and play computer games. But these games were specifically designed to really challenge those areas of the brain where we see the early Alzheimer's pathology.
And these were the greebles.
These were the greebles
come in,
yes.
which is a funny term. And we're not, for those of you listening on radio, we can't show you what greebles are, but why don't you kind of describe what the greebles are and what's the purpose of these tests?
Sure. So greebles were actually developed to test expertise. So there are a number of greebles. They come in things called families, so they have similar features across families. But
they're little images is what they are.
They're images, right. They sort of look like little purple alien creatures.
Right.
So,
that's a fair... Yeah, I've seen them. That's what they look like.
Yeah,
okay.
They kind of have like pointy noses
right.
and fins and all these things where they're human-like, but not quite human. And if you're unfamiliar with them, as most people are, it's really, really difficult to tell these greebles apart. Mm-hmm. So the test that I had people do was I would show 4 different greebles on the screen. 3 of them were exactly the same, but just rotated, so you weren't looking at it in exactly the same way. And then 1 of them was different. So as I said, because most people are unfamiliar with these greebles, it's really tough to tell them apart. So I would ask the people to tell me which one of these greebles was different from the rest.
And I'm assuming it's fairly difficult.
It's very difficult, yes. I had a lot of people yell at me.
And so can you tell, could you tell from those tests, and if I had, you threw me through 18 different slides of greebles, mm-hmm. and I only could tell 4 of them were different, does that mean that I've got perhaps some early stage Alzheimer's?
Not necessarily. So this is really the very beginning of using these cognitive tests to look at differences in the early stages. What we were able to see is that people that had increased risk of Alzheimer's disease tended to score more poorly on this test. What that actually means, we still need more research to find out, but this is a really positive step in the right direction.
What it means, perhaps, is that family history plays a role in Alzheimer's.
So family
correct?
history does play a role in Alzheimer's.
We already know
that.
Okay.
Yes. What we are saying is that it might be possible using a simple computer test to identify these early changes. And we're identifying them 10 to 20 years before people would have an Alzheimer's diagnosis.
Well, I'm 57. I need to definitely take that test because I can look at an object and forget the name and not be able to say, look at that thing there, the microphone.
Oh, I think that happens to everyone.
That happens to everyone. I don't know. I think it's worse for me. Anyways, we're talking with Emily Mason from the Department of Neurological Surgery at the University of Louisville, talking about her research on Alzheimer's. What are some of the things that you've found that, as you've gotten into your research, that perhaps you didn't know and perhaps folks should know, not just about early stage Alzheimer's, but some things that may not have read in Time magazine or as you're looking at WebMD or something?
Sure. Yeah, of course, because of course Alzheimer's it's a very emotional disease and it gives people a lot of anxiety. So I think one of the biggest things is, you brought up WebMD and Time magazine. I think you need to take a lot of that information with a grain of salt. So for example, with my research, it's, like I said, a very positive step in the right direction, but there still needs to be years of work to find out what this means and how it can play into clinical care in the future. So most science is a long, long process. So
I don't want a long process. I'm 57.
I know, exactly.
I got to know right now, do I have Alzheimer's? Am I going to get it? And if so, I need to go on a lot of trips really fast.
You're telling me it took me 5 years to make this study.
But I think that's what people want to know.
Yeah.
That, this is a burgeoning field in Alzheimer's research, but
and
there's
we're
no
doing
quick
good
answer.
work.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of good progress being made. In fact, even the work that's been done, like I said, in the past 5 years has been very good. We're learning new things all the time. As I mentioned, the tau tangles that we're looking for, there are new tests being developed that can look for those specifically. Hopefully in the future that can be combined with tests like the Griebel's test that I described to really see if somebody is performing poorly on that test, then what does that physically look like in their brain?
Is there something else at the University of Louisville that you're doing besides this test in conjunction with the neurological stuff?
Yeah, so this test was actually developed when I was at Vanderbilt. So I moved from Vanderbilt to the University of Louisville.
Mm-hmm. Glad you're here.
Oh, thank you. So what I'm doing at Louisville now is actually working with people with Parkinson's disease. So we're doing something very similar. We're having them do these cognitive tests that are targeted to the region of the brain that is implicated in Parkinson's disease. One of the very, very cool things that we're able to do at the University of Louisville is I work in the Department of Neurological Surgery. There is a surgery for Parkinson's disease. It's called deep brain stimulation, where we can actually put electrodes into the brain of somebody with Parkinson's disease and help take care of some of those symptoms. So it's sort of like a pacemaker, but it goes in the brain.
That's cool.
It's very cool. And one of the very cool things about that surgery is that people are actually awake during it.
Really?
Yes, really.
Do they want to be awake,
well,
or is it part of the deal?
that's a good question. But because your brain doesn't have any nerve endings, you actually don't feel pain when someone is touching your brain.
Okay.
So because patients are awake for this surgery, it really gives us a unique opportunity to have them do these computer tests, like the Griebel's test that I described, while we have equipment inside their functioning brain, and we can listen to it and learn more about.
So that's like real-time research information.
Absolutely.
As you're putting a device or a stimulation in the brain. Wow.
Absolutely.
That's really
it's
cool.
Very, very cool.
Well, before you go, I think I ought to ask, how can people get involved in the study, or if they wish to contact you, how should they track you down, and can they get more information about Alzheimer's and some of your research?
Absolutely. So the Alzheimer's test that I described, that study is actually closed now. However, Alzheimer's research is always looking for more people to volunteer because we always want to learn more. The best way, I think, to get involved in Alzheimer's research is if you go to the Alzheimer's Association website, which is just alz.org, ALZ, thank you. There is a section on there where you can sign up for Trial Match, and that is a way to get researchers and people in the community together. So if there is a trial that you would qualify for, you can get in touch with the person that is running it.
In your community.
In your community.
So folks from Louisville may get, in a future study you're getting ready to do, may be able to get matched up with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So alls.org.
Alls.org. And then the other thing, instead of, if you're interested in participating in any kind of research, not necessarily just Alzheimer's, there's a website called researchmatch.org, which again will introduce people in the community to researchers studying all kinds of things.
Very good. All right, Emily Mason, interesting stuff. Shelby Lawson is a Bowling Green girl who came to the big city of Louisville a few years ago to attend UofL, and things kind of took off from there. Shelby is now a Fulbright scholarship winner, and she's a world traveler who credits her experience at UofL with making it all happen. Welcome, Shelby Lawson.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the States.
Thank you. It's good to be home.
So how long you been back in Louisville?
In Louisville today.
Oh, today, okay.
I got back to Kentucky in May.
Okay.
At the end of May.
Hanging out with your parents, I assume, down in Bowling Green?
Yeah, and I went back to visit my students in Texas. So It's been a lot going on since being home.
All right, so you graduated what year?
I graduated in 2014.
And your degrees were in?
A BS in economics and then a BA in Spanish.
Okay, economics and Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you do with those two? How did you parlay those into the Fulbright scholarship and whatever else you've done?
Sure. Well, immediately I went down to Teach for America in Texas, and I got to teach math. So using my Spanish with my South Texas students and then using economics, teaching algebra was really great experience, and I didn't ever think I would be a teacher, despite that both my parents are educators. But I fell in love with it and decided to apply for the Fulbright.
Okay, and so you apply for this Fulbright scholarship to where?
So I decided I was done with Spanish and Latin America for a little bit, and I decided to apply to Indonesia. Just the culture and the archipelago life really drew to me, and I was excited to go and learn about Islam and the language, and it turned out to be a really great experience.
Tell me about Indonesia.
Sure. It's definitely a developing country, but what I think is really cool about it is it's the largest Muslim nation in the world, but then
largest in terms of the number of Muslims?
Yeah, the number of Muslims. But they're super
I don't think
moderate.
most people know that.
Yeah,
Do you
a
think
lot
most
of people
know
don't
that?
know anything about Indonesia.
Has the most Muslims of any country in the world. I had no idea.
Yeah, and it's also a democracy. So they're super accepting, and it's just a really diverse. Each island has its own language and culture and like fabrics and things that they bring to their kind of life there. And so it was really neat being a part of that and getting to visit a lot of the islands, but also being there with the Fulbright and doing something purposeful like education.
Yeah. So you worked with the kids in Indonesia and college students?
So we actually work with high school students, which most Fulbrights work in the college sector, but we're working in high school in teaching English. So it was really great.
We're talking with Shelby Lawson, who's a recent UofL grad, and she's been a Fulbright scholar. We're talking about her experiences in the world and how UofL helped shape that. What else did you do in Indonesia? What did you find? You talked about the culture, and you talked about the number of Muslims in there, and you taught a little bit. So what else did you find that was interesting or that kind of maybe shaped your worldview?
Sure. I think even coming back, the amount of like stress and how fast-paced life is in America has been tough because it's just a slower pace of life. You can be late, you can be miss things, or everything is just low stress. If you forget to do something, everyone's like, oh, tidak apa-apa, it doesn't matter. So it's just nice being a part of a community that is just so warm and so welcoming, but also just so relaxed. And it reminds you to just take a step back sometimes.
You just said something that sounded like Hakuna Matata.
Yeah.
so I'm assuming you've learned the language. And what is the language in Indonesia?
The language is Bahasa Indonesia. And it's really nice because it's easy to pick up on. There's no verb tenses. So I would say I eat yesterday, I eat tomorrow, everything, the verb stays the same. So it makes it really easy to pick up on. And the Fulbright gave us an opportunity to do some intensive study during training. So it really helped us along.
And you talked about the transition back to America. What's been the toughest thing? You were gone for a year, right? About
Yeah,
a year?
9 months.
Okay, 9 months. So you come back to America, to Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Yeah.
Which is not the fastest place in the world. Neither is Louisville. You're not
Right.
coming back to New York City or Chicago or
Sure.
someplace. So what was the toughest thing you've had to adapt to back in American culture?
The pace of life definitely, but I think, and also the work schedule there. We're, as a Fulbright scholar, you're only doing 20 to 25 hours a week, and the rest of your time is volunteering or hanging out with your friends. And I haven't had any time to practice guitar since I've been back, so I just miss all that downtime.
Again, we're talking to Shelby Lawson, 2014 UofL graduate and Fulbright scholar. What do you want to do? What are you going to do with all this stuff? You've been a Fulbright scholar. You've taught in South Texas. What do you want to do?
That's the big question. I think eventually I'll go back to grad school. I'm not sure where that will be, but then I want to work with like international development and probably be abroad for the next 5 to 10 years.
So you want to go live someplace else?
Yeah, well, I just really enjoy learning about different cultures and different languages, and I think that really got started here at UofL. I took my first trip out of the country to India, which was a big change, and then UofL just continued to push me and encourage me to take trips and through my major. And so I don't know, I guess I caught that travel bug and just haven't let go of it yet.
What did you find in your trips abroad? Well, I guess I should say, what trips did you take abroad while you were a student at the University of Louisville? And then what did you find and what did you learn from each of those experiences?
Sure. I went to India for 2 weeks, and I think that just opened up my perspectives on things and that I wanted to travel more. And then I spent a month in Spain learning Spanish. And then 2 months in Costa Rica. And I think that's when I decided like I could see myself living abroad long term. And then another 4 months in Argentina. So I spent a good portion of my college career abroad. And just being like slowly taking those steps of a little bit longer really prepared me for like a whole year abroad. Because I was used to the homesickness and the different culture and the different food and being lonely sometimes that comes with the territory.
Well, my son just got back from Costa Rica. He spent the spring semester in Costa Rica in a Spanish immersion program and going to university there. And he came back, same thing. He wants to, travel a lot now, so he loves it. So he may wind up living somewhere in the world when he gets all done.
Wish him luck.
Was there any class at UofL, any professor, anything that you remember that sort of drove you towards this international bent, or did you just sort of discover it once you got overseas in India? What molded you? What were the courses and the people that molded you at UofL?
Well, being part of the College of Business and then a major in Spanish, there's just a lot of opportunities to go abroad through UofL. The scholarship opportunities just make it really easy to fund, which can be the biggest obstacle for a lot of students. It's not of a lack of will, but the money isn't there. And so both those departments helped me a lot. And then I think Dr. Buchanan, she is the
Rhonda Buchanan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. She's the director of the LALS program, and just hearing about her experiences and her always pushing Panama and all these different places, she was a huge encouragement and always willing to work with my schedule to make sure I could get all my credits.
All right, now let me ask you the political questions. You've been to South Texas. You've dealt with immigrants from Mexico, legal and illegal, I'm sure. And you've also dealt with this huge Muslim population in Indonesia. You know the political climate right now in the United States. So what would you have to say to people about your experiences in Texas and with people legal and illegal in Texas and with Muslims in the Muslim population in Indonesia?
Sure. I think the big news stories are definitely going to be the 1% that is, not pulling their weight or posing a threat maybe to us, but getting to know everyone and just not looking at what they look like, but getting to know the person and treating them as a human. I think a lot of times we forget to do that, and that they're just looking for their best life as well.
Did you have any fear in Indonesia?
No, not at all.
Do you have any fear
safe.
in India? Any place else that you've gone?
No, not that I can think of. I guess India, I went with a group, so I felt comfortable there. But Indonesia, I felt
but
very,
you're living on
very
your own
safe.
in Indonesia, right?
It's true. Yeah, living on my own, but very safe.
And you plan to go back to do what?
Yeah, so I'll be going back as the research coordinator for the Fulbright Commission. Essentially, I'll be planning all the trainings and doing the support for the incoming teachers coming to Indonesia, but also doing research on the sustainability of the Fulbright program.
One final note, what would you tell students in Bowling Green, Warren County, or even in Louisville here, around there, might be listening on the radio, what would you tell them about the University of Louisville and your experience that might help them make their decision on where to go to college?
Sure. I mean, I can't speak highly enough of my experience here at UofL. The professors care, the university cares, and there's so many opportunities to do whatever you would want to do. So I think it's the best school in the state.
Of course you do, as you should. All right, well, Shelby Lawson, world traveler, good luck going back to where you came from, Indonesia.
That's
and
right.
Have a great summer while you're here. David Peterson is an American linguist and language creator who constructs artificial languages for TV shows and movies, including Dothraki for the Game of Thrones TV series. He spoke at U of L a while back, and my colleague and resident Game of Thrones junkie, Janet Cappiello, had a chance to talk to him.
We are speaking to David Peterson. He is the author of Art of Language Invention, and he created the Dothraki language and other languages that are used on the HBO series Game of Thrones. You've also created other languages besides those.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, a bunch of others. About 40 at this point.
40.
Yeah.
Goodness, that's a lot.
Yeah.
How did you get started creating languages? What sparked you? Was it Star Trek, and was it Lord of the Rings, or did you just get interested when you were in college?
Yeah, it was, I mean, I never knew about any languages in Star Trek or Lord of the Rings or anything like that. It wasn't until college where I was taking a bunch of different languages because I just wanted to learn as many languages as I could.
To speak them?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you bet. I mean, it's still a goal of mine to learn as many as I possibly can. It's just more difficult once you're out of the university. So, you know, any undergraduates are watching this, you know, take advantage of that fact. Goodness, it's so expensive and time consuming to do it once you're an adult and have a job and everything. But anyway, so what was I? All right, so it was when I took a linguistics course that it actually sparked it. I knew about language creation from a class on Esperanto that I took at Berkeley, so I knew that people created languages. But it wasn't until I took linguistics and saw, as we were comparing constructions for various languages across many, many different language families, that I thought, okay, I could actually create my own and do something that was fun for me. And so that was where I started back in 2000.
And you started by creating a language called Zyra? Wait.
Oh, you're thinking of Gila? No, that was.
Oh, yeah.
That one was. I think that was my fourth one.
Oh.
by that time, no. My first one was a pretty bad one. It was called Meg Davy, and it was a bad language for this reason, which was I just started creating it, and I was very passionate about it. I had no idea what I was doing, and so I didn't really have a purpose for it in mind. So I did things that I did just because I liked them. I did things because I learned about them in my linguistics class. I did things because they would be easy to learn, and then I did things just because they were clever. And so because it was trying to fulfill all of these different purposes at once, it ended up not fulfilling any of them at all.
Right.
Right. And
Right.
so the end result was just unsatisfying for any of these goals.
Well, then that leads me right into a question about Dothraki. You had about 30 words to use from the book series, and then you had to create this language. So, two questions. How many words are there? And what was the first thing you had to think of when thinking about creating it? Because you clearly had a goal.
Yeah, so there were 56
Oh, 56.
words total, but that's including the names, the proper names.
Oh, okay.
Which, I mean, they're not very informative in terms of grammar, but definitely in terms of the sound of the language. So the first thing was, taking all of the words and analyzing the sound system, which you could do just based on what you had there. And that was twofold. First of all, seeing what was there, but also figuring out how I thought whatever he had spelled, how it was supposed to be pronounced. I had to make that determination and then see what the entire sound system was at that point and figure out if there were any gaps, if there were anything I wanted to add, if there was anything like that. Then I looked at the any place where there were 2 words or more that were grammatical. So anytime there was a title, a name of a city, or even just a short phrase or something like that, to figure out what type of a language this was going to be, to see if it was consistent. And that's where I discovered that, consistently, modifiers would follow their head. So adjectives came after the nouns, based on my analysis. And also that, so there was that, and also that it was inflectional, because you had evidence of words in here like khal, khalesi, and then also khalasar and khalaka, which are all different words but are all kind of related to one another. And so they all have different types of suffixes on them and have different types of meaning changes. So I said, all right, this is probably an inflectional language. It's probably going to be predominantly suffixing. But nevertheless, given the shape of words, it's not going to be monstrously agglutinating. The words are going to be relatively short. So it's probably going to be roughly what you would expect to see from a Western European language, filtered through what I now want to do with it. So that was where I started.
Okay.
And then after that, it was just filling out the back end of it so that it was something that I was satisfied with, that also matched everything that was in the books as nearly as I possibly could.
So it needed to match a sound that you thought a nomadic group of people who ride on horses and are very violent. Not so much. It needed to match the sound of the words that were present in the book. Okay, so
because
you didn't think about the people and the storyline at all?
Well, not for the sound of it, but
Okay.
also, this was guided by the books because, this show was supposed to be as faithful an adaptation of the books as we possibly could get.
Right.
And furthermore, I thought even if the show isn't successful, the book series and George R.R. Martin himself already had a legion of fans before the show ever came out.
Yeah.
And so I thought, even if the show runs one season and gets canceled, if it has any life, it's going to be with the fans of the series. So
Right.
it had to be something that was going to be recognizable to readers and fans of the books. They were my intended audience.
Okay, so it's been enormously successful.
Yeah.
Did you, as the seasons went on, did you have to expand the vocabulary? Or did they pretty much have what they needed?
Of course, I'm the one that translates. So, but also it's really my language. So, I expand the vocabulary just for fun, just because that's what I like to do. Like for season 2, I think by the time I got to season 2, there was no vocabulary that I needed in order to translate the material that I was given.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean I didn't stop, that I stopped expanding the language. I'll keep doing it until I die, because that's what I do for fun.
And you also created High Valerian and some other languages in the books in the series. So you're having a good time with this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If I wasn't doing it for money, I'd be doing it for fun anyway, because that's what I was doing for about 10 years beforehand.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for coming to the University of Louisville and speaking with me.
That was David Peterson, who's an American linguist and creator of artificial languages, talking to Janet Cappiello from the Office of Communications and Marketing about his work. That'll about do it for this edition of UofL Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville. You can hear these shows every Monday and Tuesday night at 6 o'clock on 93.9. You can also pick up the video versions of these programs on Metro TV or on KET3 throughout the week. And as always, around 9:30 every Monday morning, I'm on Great Day Live on WHAS TV with some new and hopefully interesting story about the University of Louisville. Thanks for listening, and go Cards.